know it's nice to be together though, isn't it? We haven't done this in so long and it's nice to see new faces, faces I haven't seen before. So, let me introduce myself because my camera wasn't working at home when we did our Zoom meeting. So I'm Shelley. You guys voted for me to be president this year. So, thank you also for, it's not on. It's on. Can you hear me okay?
There you go. I gotta get it close.
I gotta get it close, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know I'm new at this. So, again, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for being, so flexible in regards to the different locations we've had to go to. Next month, we may be at a different location again. But please be patient. Prosser might have a room for us. We're not sure. We may be at the Clarksville Library. I know a lot of people are concerned in regards to parking. Please call a fellow Master Gardener if that's what your concern is, and carpool. It's a great idea to go out to dinner, visit, come to the meeting, get to know your fellow gardeners. And then that way, again, we're taking up less spaces at that library, if you don't mind. We're doing our best. This location itself costs money. And we don't necessarily want our money going to pay for a place for us to meet. So please be patient with us, okay? We're trying to do the best we can. And Gina's been extremely helpful with all this because I'm clueless, because I'm new to the area. So they all have great ideas. We are ready for our wonderful
Introducing you.
Sure.
Yes. Oh, Jeff, where's Jeff?
Jeff, would you like to introduce our speakers?
I don't want to make her my hot, please. I'm trying to avoid.
Okay, all right. So Bonnie is not a stranger to us, is she?
No.
She is a gold level master gardener, and listen to this, she has more than 6,000 volunteer hours. When I got to 100 and then 6,000, okay. So she's been a master gardener for 25 years, took 25 years to get there. She has been a past president of the organization and has served as chairperson for several different projects, among them the Butterfly Garden, the Youth Master Gardener Program, the Sensory Demonstration Garden, and she is the current chair of that particular committee. Bonnie says that she enjoys visiting gardens and sharing her love of plants whenever possible. So when our program committee last year was looking for ideas for who we could have come and talk, several of you suggested Bonnie because they said she is a great speaker and she's just going to Scotland and she's going to have all this wonderful stuff to have to share with us. So several people have asked her tonight, is she excited? She said terrified was a better word, but I'm sure that we are excited to have you and we so look forward to hearing what you had to say to us. Welcome, we're glad to have you here.
22 minutes starting now.
Yes.
When you want me to.
Good there.
Your ward now, Bonnie.
There you go.
Okay, point it in the right direction. Okay. Yep. Thank you all for your patience. If there's one thing I'm not, it's tech savvy. So here we are, and hopefully this is.
Hold on, my bad.
Love it when a plan comes together.
In the words of the immortal Robert Burns, who is the patron poet of Scotland, he says something about the mice and men, the plans of mice and men aft gang a glee, which translated means go wrong whenever possible.
Now I advanced one, so try again. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll look back. I'm gonna move your water right here. Thank you.
So the Gardens of Scotland exists here tonight because last year I got lucky. I don't ever win anything. And I entered the lottery last January in 2024. That I got this email from Purdue that said, do you want to go to Scotland? And you're in with another, 400 people. So if you want to go, sign up. I signed up. I thought, I'll never hear from these people again. Come Friday of that same week, it said, you have been selected. So I decided that we were going to Scotland. And in order to understand this program a little bit, you have to know that Mike Dana was the person who ran the program. And he was the head of the landscape architecture group in the.
Her husband's a doctor, then shit, where'd you go?
Horticulture.
Should have,
And he retired.
couldn't
Okay.
afford.
We got to be his last group. Now, I understand that he's going to try and do this again as a civilian as opposed to a Purdue employee. And so maybe there's another chance, but so far I haven't heard another thing. And the only requirement to go was, other than being chosen out of the lottery and then paying your big bucks to go. You had, there were 24 of us in total, and everybody had to be a master gardener. I thought there were going to be master gardeners from Indiana. Well, wrong again, because we had master gardeners from all over the country. The farthest away was California, but we had people from Wisconsin, Michigan, several from Indiana. We even had one from Florida. So you got to meet a lot of different people. They had a book we had to study before we went. We had to read about all of these gardens you're going to see. There were 15 gardens in 10 days. So you had to kind of know what was happening, except that the book was organized alphabetically. And we saw them geographically. So everybody was a little confused, trying to figure out where we're going today. I decided that since it didn't make any sense to me then, it might not make any sense to you now. So I chose to put them in more or less chronological order, so that we start with the oldest gardens in Scotland that we saw to the most current gardens in Scotland that we saw. Maybe that will help to keep things better organized. You let me know. Okay, our very first garden that we're going to see, because it's the oldest garden, was also the worst garden. So once we get past this, it gets better. This one was, as you can see, in the 1500s, and it was at Stirling Castle, and that's as close as we ever got to Stirling Castle. And it's because they had a battle at Stirling Bridge, at which point the British marching along collapsed the bridge, which gave the Scots a great advantage, and they overran the Brits, and they were able to then hold on for about 300 years in terms of their ruling of Scotland and being separate from the English. Most of the history of these gardens has to do with the fact that the Scots and the English have hated each other for a long time. And partly because of that, we have the Scots who aligned with the French, because the French have hated the English for a long time. So it gets kind of confusing, but as far as the gardens are concerned, French influence in Scottish gardens is a big deal. Here, what you see are a bunch of confused looking people standing in the middle of a bunch of people. And that's because nobody told us, and the literature didn't say, guess what? When you get there, guys, there's nothing there. So we were all looking for the knot garden. We've all kind of seen knot gardens. We were all looking for it. We never found it because it's not there. What we had was this little wall and a hump. And the problem is that this garden was theoretically built in the 1500s, and when the Scots ultimately lost the war against the English in 1745 or 6, all of the things that were important to the Scots were destroyed. So this garden, however beautiful it may ever have been, is gone. And there are no records left to show what this garden might have looked like. So we all got back on the coach and said, please let it get better.
Gotta hold your mouth just right.
I think that might be. And it worked the last time. Okay. So Crazy's Castle Gardens was the next one chronologically. And you can see that it was restored. But it was restored in the 1920s when Gertrude Jekyll was a big deal in gardening in Britain. They did not have a clue what the gardens looked like originally in 1619. So they decided to redo it and they made it look like Gertrude Jekyll would have done it. You can also see that eventually it was turned over to the National Trust. And you will hear me talk about the National Trust over and over and over again. The National Trust for Scotland is comprised of approximately 600 properties around Scotland. And these are, it's what I call where all good gardens go to retire. Once the family no longer has an heir who cares anything about the gardens have to go. So rather than lose the gardens, they are generally turned over to the National Trust. So we'll talk about the National Trust some more. Am I going to do this again? Ah, it worked. Okay, in this case, what they tried to do was reconstruct the garden as they thought it might have been. In which case that means topiary, because gardens in the 18th and 17th century were very formal places. And they made these magnificent and huge things, and they're all made out of Taxus yew. You know, we don't use that much here. We used to have a lot of Taxus yew, but it has fallen out of favor. But you can prune the heck out of Taxus yew, and it will live for darn near forever. So that's been there at least since the 1920s. I think that those original plants were there. They just had lost all of their formation. Gertrude Jekyll was one of those gardeners who was a specialist in things like color. So you'll find that there are groups of red plants and groups of gold plants and groups of various shades of other plants that are surrounded by all kinds of other plants. I'm sorry that the definition that one was a red plant down there. And we had these little thingies that I'm hooked up to tonight. No, shouldn't have done that. That we all had a way of listening to person talk. And for many of these gardens, we had guided tours. In which case we got to listen, but we had Scots who were doing the talking. Okay, and there were some times when the fellow would talk and we would all go blank and look at him. And the reason I labeled this one up here as a dovecote is because it was a duku. And we wondered what a duku was. And eventually, Mike Dana translated for us and we discovered that it was a dovecote. But we have lots of opportunities with Gertrude to have pathways that are all have some focal point at the end of them.
Dr. Tom Friedman, former director of the CPC. Thank you. We asked HHS.
They had various kinds of and really pretty plants all along the way that were perennial. This is one of those kinds of things where you wonder about climate. Well, we were this was just north of Edinburgh. So, you know, Edinburgh is not the warmest place in the world, but we were there the last week of June. And here we have all of the plants that haven't been able to be planted yet because it hasn't got warm enough in Scotland to the annuals yet. last week in June. So they had lots of rather broken down greenhouses. They call them glass houses in Scotland. So we got to see some things in the greenhouses that I found fascinating. They had a beautiful fuchsia, which is the upper right-hand corner here. And then the one at the bottom, believe it or not, that's a red geranium. Your average ordinary red geranium, except it was 3 feet high. It was all growing up a wall. So I guess if we could keep something alive through our winters, we could have that too. Here's the hedge, that another series of very evenly trimmed hedges. And it has this pretty little red plant. We all were admiring this red plant. This guy here in the bottom corner said, that's an invasive plant, but we haven't been able to get rid of it. So we've just left it. We all thought that it made the space of the green so much prettier to have a little red in there. But he didn't like it. And he's a person, he takes care of this garden for the National Trust. He has people, dozens of them, who work for him. In the center picture here, we have what was the original kitchen garden. The rest of the pictures are just things that I found of interest there. And this one in particular, because anybody want to guess what the bottom left-hand picture is? It's a representation of what? That's a rosebud, guys. Now, you have to use your imagination here, but this gentleman has decided that this garden never had a rose garden, but it's gonna have a rose garden now. I asked him why he was putting in a rose garden, and he said, because I can. And I thought, okay, I got that. Pitt Meaden was originally built in 16, whatever it says up there. And thank you, it was restored and turned over to the National Trust in 1950 something. Okay. Now, remember that knot garden we were supposed to see in the very first one? There's a knot garden. Everything here was trimmed. This is another one of those gardens that, because they had some plans, when they restored this garden, they restored it to what they thought the original garden probably looked like. In the in-between, I don't know if you can tell, but there are some little baby plants that are trying to come up, some in here. That's not the way the original garden would have been. The original garden would have been like the central format, which would have had white gravel. They didn't have the concept of having annual plants back then like we do now. They weren't developed. It was too much like work. So they used colored gravel in the in-betweens. And you could have white, you could have brown, you could have a combination of white and brown, and you could have gray. Pick one. Those were your choices. But they have roses. Oh my, it was rose season in Britain. And there was never a bug, never any black spot, never any blemish on all of the gorgeous roses that they had in these gardens. I don't know where to go here. So they also have lots of interesting color combinations of the perennials that we could see. I'm sorry, I'm in your way.
Go ahead.
Okay. And things that I really wished I could have, but the climate's all wrong. You know, by June here, it'd be burning up. But there, things thrive that would not thrive here. Drummond Castle Garden was another one of those that they had some plans. They knew what it should look like. You can see that it was built a long time ago. It had 80 steps that you had to walk down, 80 400-year-old steps that you had to walk down in the rain to get to the bottom of this garden. You can see that up there I've said family is returned in 1785 maybe. Okay, these were this was a family who was on the wrong side of the war. They supported the Stuarts. They lost the war at Culloden. And all of their properties were turned over to the government, who gave them away to whomever they chose. But eventually they found that there was indeed some family member who was on the right side of the war, and they inherited this castle. So it stayed in that family for a long time until the 1950s. This is what it looks like. It took me 3 pictures to stitch this all together, because I don't have one of those great cameras that do these big ones. If you think it looks like Versailles, it was intended to look like Versailles. The gardens in this era were influenced greatly by France and by the Italian Renaissance. The Italian Renaissance had a great affinity for all kinds of statues. So you'll find that at the end of every path, you open into a green space, there's a statue, or a fountain, or a something. But mostly they had little fountains and all of these topiary trees, because they like that. Here's another of the not gardens that we should have seen. And this one has kind of brown and white gravel, as opposed to the white gravel that the other one had. They are being true to the way it would have been back then. On this bridge, you will see that there is, in front of this bridge, there's this big hedge. And then there's a guy on the bridge. The guy on the bridge was a bus driver. I wondered what on earth he was staring at. So I walked up onto the bridge to see what he was staring at. And what he was staring at is this little pocket garden down here that you can't see from anywhere else on that property unless you're standing in the middle of that bridge. And on the other side of the bridge, it goes off into the acres and acres and acres that is not part of the walled garden that you saw that looked like Versailles. Lots of English lavender, and the upper right-hand corner is a tree that had grown in that garden for 350 years. It came down in a storm a few years ago, and they couldn't bear to just let it go. So they made a table out of it, which was, I thought, a good use for it. And see this cute little thing here on the on the bottom? Okay. That's a rumba for grass. That gave my husband the gotta have one. Because you know, those 80 steps that we went down to get there, it's about sheer like this on the grassy part to get back up to this castle. And I'm thinking, how on earth do they mow that without killing themselves? That's how they do it. They had 6 of these little dudes. They were running all around. This little guy was parked in the woods there, and I almost tripped over him because I wasn't expecting to see him, but I thought I'd take a picture so I'd have one for my husband. Very interesting.
Okay, interrupt you a second.
Yes.
There's been some comments on Zoom that some male up front keeps talking and coming over your microphone and they can't hear you on Zoom.
Whoever you are,
Humbling up in the front.
whoever you are, hush.
Thank you.
That's all I can say. Okay, the Royal Botanic Garden. This one is in Edinburgh. They have 2 other Royal Botanic Gardens in Scotland. They are geographically located so that everybody in the country has access to one or another of the Royal Botanic Gardens. I thought that it was interesting that they would do that. We saw private gardens, we saw semi-private gardens, we saw public gardens. These are the 2 coming up, public gardens that we saw. It's free, it's huge, and it's free. It was established originally in Edinburgh itself at Holyrood. Everybody know what Holyrood is? Holyrood means Holy Cross. Used to be a monastery. And then when the Protestant Reformation hit, they kicked out all the monks and they moved in all the royalty. Because prior to that, they had lived at the top of the hill in the castle there, and it's cold up there. So it was warmer down at the bottom of the Royal Mile but that was where Holyrood is. And it has been in its current location for what, 100 years, 200 years? I mean, the ages of some of these things are just mind-boggling, how they get there. But because it was so special, it has a number of things. It has more plants of Chinese origin in that garden anywhere outside of China. It also has a redwood forest that was, because John Muir was a Scot. Now, mind you, the redwoods had to be imported from the United States, but they have a big sign there that says that John Muir was the father of the American National Park System. Believe it if you wish. So it is what it is. Thank you. Here's the hedge. That hedge is 26 feet tall. There were originally 200 plants that were put in there when they were about a foot tall in 1906. And they now have about 175 of those plants left because, of course, they got big. And these are all beech trees. We got a lot of beech trees in Scotland. Behind in that area is where the master gardeners for the city of Edinburgh work there. We also went through and eventually got to the Chinese garden because, of course, you wanted to see something. But like every good botanical garden, and like none of the other gardens that we had seen, they got signage, man, out the yin yang, they've got signage. So you never have to worry about where you are and what you're looking at. And they have this giant cedar tree that they invite you to lay down on the ground so you can look up and enjoy. This is the rock garden. Back when this garden was initially started, it was intended to grow plants for the medical field, plants that you could use as medicines. But also, the rage in Europe was for all of these rock gardens. So they have a gigantic rock garden. And some of that's one single plant that's growing across a few rocks there. And probably it was about 7 feet off the ground. Here's the Chinese garden, or part of it, where they have this plaque that talks about China. The Glasgow Botanic Garden, on the other hand, is not a part of the Royal Botanical Garden system. It belongs to the city of Glasgow. Glasgow, again, was initially built so that there would be medicines, plants that could be made into medicines. It was huge. I didn't see it. That's what I saw of the Glasgow Botanic Garden. It was pouring rain. They had a greenhouse. I went into the greenhouse. I am a wimp. As those of you who have ever worked with me know, I am a wimp. But it covers 37 acres and they have greenhouse after greenhouse after greenhouse after greenhouse. And they are arranged by continent, and within the continents, within whether it's a temperate climate or a tropical climate. Inver means on the banks of. So Inverness is on the banks of the Ness River. Inver is on the banks of the U River. This one's a great one. I was really looking forward to this one. Osgood Mackenzie, when he was 21 years old, right after his father died, he had been brought up in France. He'd never been to Scotland in his life. His mother gave him 12,000 acres. Now, there's a present for you, don't you think? 12,000 acres. His family had been one of those on the wrong side of the war back in the 1700s. So after things got better, after Queen Victoria, he got to go home, basically home, and became a laird, as they call them, a laird. And he built this garden. When he did, there was nothing there. It's a peninsula that juts into the North Atlantic Ocean. And when he got there, there were 2 trees, 2 willow trees, one of which still survives. And that was all. And he decided, by George, he was going to make a garden. So he did. And they brought dirt, soil. They brought it in from Ireland on a barge because there was nothing there that would grow anything. So he has this beautiful garden. And he built a wall because you had to have something that would break the wind from the North Atlantic. This garden faces south. And he has all kinds of tropical plants there. Now, mind you, that this garden exists in Scotland at the same latitude that Juneau, Alaska does here. We couldn't grow this kind of stuff in Juneau, Alaska, but he can grow this stuff because the Gulf Stream comes across and right in the in-between of Ireland and Scotland, that Gulf Stream warms the area and provides enough of warmth to be able to make this garden grow. It was pouring rain, it was 40 degrees, there was a gale. I was wearing a coat, a vest, a raincoat, and I was soaked to the skin within 10 minutes. Now, those of you who have ever worked with me know that that's not my preferred method. But because I wanted to take pictures, I stuck it out. That's what things look like when you're doing it with a camera through a driving rain. This man has probably 50 of the 12,000 acres in this garden. He planted trees as his first thing. It took him 20 years to get trees enough to be able to cast a shadow, and with the soil that was brought in from Ireland to be able to grow things. And so he did. He traveled to Tibet and all kinds of Asian countries, and he dug stuff up and he brought it home with him because that was what they did in those days. You know, today that wouldn't happen, but that's what he did. There were trees, I have no idea what kind they were. They did have signs, but I couldn't read them. I wasn't going to try to dig my way through to read them. But look at the bark on those trees. Isn't that beautiful? There were things blooming there that had already come and gone here. We had things like rhododendrons that we wouldn't find here in the last week in June. First week in July, much less. So along here on the bottom right hand of your screen, what you see is a Scots pine. There used to be Scots pines that covered all of the hills in Scotland. There are only 84 of them left. But they have now instituted a program to try and reforest large parts of Scotland. So once they get a chance, maybe there will again be Scots pines. But they were all devastated because back in the day when you had sailing ships, they needed very tall and very straight wood in order to put the sails on sailing ships. Can you imagine denuding an entire country for sailing ships? Well, they did it. On our way down from Purdue to Glasgow, we passed here. I don't know how our coach driver ever found this place. It was the narrowest roads I have ever seen, but he wanted us to see what's known as the Queen's View. In 1842 was the first visit that Victoria made to Scotland. She fell in love with Scotland. And she wanted to build a castle right there. But she couldn't build a castle right there because nobody would sell her the land. So instead, her husband, Prince Albert, bought her Balmoral Castle in 1848. And now Balmoral remains as one of the main castles where the British royalty spends their time. They have laws, by the way, that require that you spend a certain amount of time in Scotland. Otherwise, you can't continue to call it part of the British Commonwealth. Broughton House. Isn't that cool? I couldn't resist that house. It was so cute. That's not Broughton House. That's a house next door to Broughton House. Broughton House itself is gray and it's ugly. But it was kind of cool because it was a townhouse garden. It was built in 1901 and it was built by an artist. Now you think of artists as being struggling, starting artists, but help me tell you, this guy was not struggling. This was when the fantasy about Japan was rampant all over Europe. And so he painted lots of Japanese scenes when he visited Japan. And they sold like hotcakes in England and Scotland. So he had a fortune he could buy and create this garden. It's comprised of lots of really one-person narrow pathways. Take your life in your hands if you can't feel them well, because they have all been uprooted and they will rot a little bit like that. But again, you'll see that there's a fella in the picture down here. He is part of the National Trust for Scotland, and he takes care of that place all by himself. That's 2 acres worth. This man kept building gardens and planting trees, and most of which came from Asia. And he didn't have enough of space, so he bought the house next door, which was the front that we saw. Everybody gets to exit through the gift shop. So that house was the gift shop. Everybody also has their very own little greenhouse. I wanted to go sit in the greenhouse because I was really cold. But there were 3 or 4 people from our coach tour that had got there before me and weren't enough of seats. Here is the biggest, tallest climbing hydrangea I have ever seen. I don't know that there's another one anywhere that exists that's as big as that. It thrives. I don't know what they're going to do when they reach the roof because they're out of space. And other plants that they have in the upper right-hand corner, you see what looks like maybe a dogwood. It's a variegated dogwood. And I'm thinking, it's a variegated dogwood. What kind is it? Do you think there was a sign? Not on your life. But I thought, how does it survive here? It's in full sun. We saw lots of these variegated dogwoods in full sun. And I finally figured it out. It's because there is never any full sun in Scotland. This is Branklin Garden, and it's what was known as the arts and crafts style, built in the 1920s. These folks got married. They bought a house in a subdivision. It had a swimming pool. It had tennis courts. They took it all out and they started gardening. My next door neighbor should see this place. My next door neighbor thinks that I have an excessive number of plants. These folks have 3,500 or so plants, or so. And most of them came from seed that was collected, not by the owners, but bought by the owners from all these people who traveled all over Asia. And they would buy the seeds of things that they thought they would like, and they planted them. Again, this was during the 20s when everybody was crazy for all these rock gardens. So it is largely has 3 different varieties of rock gardens. I don't know what the difference was, but they had plenty of them. And again, I think that's the same tree, same kind of a tree, whatever it was, because it had that same wonderful bark. There is a blue Himalayan poppy. I only know that because I was standing next to the guy who was giving the tour and I asked him. The rest of these things are rare. That's a redbud of some sort of variety that we don't have any of in this country, but that's a redbud. There were also lots of things blooming again that we would not have had. The azaleas, the rhododendrons, all of those things were still blooming there in Scotland. They have this little miniature waterfall because they wanted to recreate what it looked like in the Himalayas. One presumes. I haven't been there. And this one is my favorite garden. Pitmuis. You remember there was a pit meeting a little while ago? So I couldn't figure out what's pit. What does pit mean? And it only means in Scotland somehow that it's in the area of. And the first one, the meeting, was in a swamp. And I don't know Mui what it was or is. These people bought this, or this lady bought this property at the end of World War II. She was a widow. She had a son. She bought this property from a colonel, I think he was, who had bought the place after World War I. And he had gardened there, but then he became ill and couldn't, and he sold out to her after World War II. Originally, that whole property had been tenant farmers, so there was no garden there originally. But he had a fascination for delphiniums. She kept a lot of his delphiniums. All of these little gardens are pet friendly. You people who are pet people would love this place, because as long as you keep your pet on a leash, you can go there. Artichokes. You can grow anything, I guess, if you have a walled garden. I don't know. They could. But this woman is just unique. She had the best ideas ever that I wish that I had known at other points in my life. One of them is that she has fishnet about 6 inches square. It's black. She puts it down on the garden floor every spring. And all the plants, as they come in, she raises this fishnet so that all the plants get to stand up straight rather than falling over on each other in the wind. I thought that was the best idea I had ever heard. She said it was getting tough because as her plants grew and the netting got old, they can't find black fishnet in England anymore, in Scotland. One of the guys who was from Wisconsin said that he could still get her black fishnet, so he said he was going to send her some. I hope he did. This is a remnant from the original garden after World War I of these. It's a Tibetan cherry. There was a whole line of them. They have such cool bark. This is another one of her really good ideas. You can't really see it in the picture, but that bridge goes from her walled garden area where it's heavily cultivated into an area, oh, maybe, I don't know, 10 maybe acres more, that's on a little stream that's full of deer. They don't come to her garden because she's got chicken wire that's nailed to the bottom of that bridge. And not only do the deer not want to walk on it, but people can walk on it. It's an arched bridge, and with their climate, everything's wet all the time, slippery, but it's never slippery because of her wire. I was fascinated. This lady was just brilliant.
Wait, I can show it. I can stand up. I see it.
Pardon?
So if you can't, there's like a shadow right here. So it doesn't go all the way to the edge.
Right.
It's about probably 4 inches in on either side.
But isn't that a great idea for anybody who has an arched bridge? We used to have one, and that's why I say, I wish I had known about this at another point in my life. And we had to scrub it every year and sand it down and try to do anything to keep it from being slippery. Oh, and this is another cool thing. This picture over here to the left, if you have a place that's 400 years old, you can have your very own mausoleum on the property. You have no idea who was buried there. But she had an eye for design, and she had just gorgeous color combinations and statuary here, there, and yon. And you can see there's another one of those variegated dogwoody things. And here it is in all its glory, and it had a sign, and the sign says Cornus Controversa. I'd never heard of one, but that's called the wedding cake tree. And all those other little variegated dogwoods that we saw all over Scotland, they're all that kind of tree. Wouldn't grow here.
Bob Hill has one.
Does he?
Yeah.
That's great. And then it was nice to look down and be able to recognize the occasional plant, the delphiniums, the bachelor buttons. It was lovely. They had things growing all over the roofs. I guess nobody cares that it's eventually going to fall in, but I worried about that. Reeve Garden. Reeve is one of those wonderful places. It is the home, basically, for the National Trust for Scotland. The National Trust was created in early 1950, And it took them a while to find a place to put a training center. They decided that with 600 properties to take care of, they needed to train people. And so they used to be able to train 15 people a year. They lived there for an entire year. They work there every single day. They do all the work themselves, hands-on, from pruning to edging to figuring out what the plants are. So they got their budget cut about 5 years ago, and now they can only support 5 of those 15 people. So they're not churning them out quite like they were, but those people I pointed out in some of the previous slides, they're all graduates of the 3 school for the National Trust for Scotland. Treve itself has all kinds of, this was a tropical garden here, right next door to all of the spring blooming things that had come and gone here. There's a 75-foot tall weeping beech and a giant rhubarb, thanks to Gina. I finally sent her a picture and said, what is this? I have seen these in the United States at Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania. And it's giant, not that you can see this here, but it's an aquatic plant and it has lots of presence. Each of those leaves is 5 feet across. But what they discovered was it's invasive. So they no longer propagate it and put it at any of the gardens, except the one that they have kept here just to show people what it is. Here's the tranquil garden. You see those sculptures that they have? All of that is basalt. Basalt is the stuff from which the earth was made. It's exposed in Scotland in many, many places. Scotland has a very volcanic history, and so they make things out of it. I don't know how they do that, but you know, to make a big ball and a tree and a whatnot out of that stuff, it's hard as rock. So, but they do, and this one's even cooler. I don't know what you see when you look at this, but there are 2 things there. There's what I call the wooden Indian on the top, and there's the duck on the bottom. And this is one single chunk of rock that has the basalt on the top and sandstone on the bottom. And so they took advantage of it and carved it. Lots of English lavender. The house itself is where they house their 5 people now. And they have 1,500 acres there, so lots of room to expand. And only 70 of it is currently gardened. This is a special garden, Lockerbie Memorial Garden. Y'all remember when the plane went down over Lockerbie, Scotland? Yeah. Well, the mother of one of the people who died in that crash donated a bundle of bucks. And her request was that they create a garden in memory of all of the people who died there. So of course, it's a new garden. It hasn't grown up much yet, but. And there's one of those balls. My husband wants one. He wants one badly, but I don't see that that's ever going to be in his future. Little Sparta. We are really coming to the end, and I know I've exceeded my 45 minutes. I apologize. Little Sparta was one of those places that I didn't want to go to. I had read about it in the literature, and I thought, pompous people that they are, but maybe it was just the fellow who wrote the article who was very pompous. This fellow, we're out in the middle of nowhere, mind you. Here's the nowhere that we're out in the middle of, and you say to yourself, there's a garden here. Well, there is a garden here. If you cross another one of the little hills, you go down this very long lane, you wait for the sheep to cross in front of you so you don't get in their way. And what you find is there is a copse of trees, there is a lake, there's all kinds of wonderful things here. This guy really did do a good job. He was an artist and he created the typical, I mean, every one of these gardens has one thing in common. They all are walled gardens of one sort or another. Hedges or walls, whatever, they all have them. That's giant goat's beard. We have that here, but it doesn't grow that big here. there are parts of the garden that are very formal, and then the rest of it, this guy had a chisel and he used it. He created 270 different artworks. Some of them were poetry, but they were all his very own. Some of them he chipped out of granite, and he was just amazing. But he got this property because he married well. His wife's father owned all this land. And when he died, she inherited and they moved in. So he had a place finally to put his art. Theoretically, according to the literature, this is the most celebrated garden in England, Scotland, wherever they are. So he had a fascination for ships of any sort and description. And you'd just be wandering along and all of a sudden there's a boat of whatever sort, you know, not that it looked like anybody had used these things. He had a pathway through a garden that each one of the stepping stones was a different kind of a ship. And he had chipped away at the whole thing. He was a recluse. He never left this place for 25 years. He would create an artwork and then he would have people who would stage it for him all over Europe. That's how he made his money. But he never left because he had agoraphobia. He couldn't leave. Eventually he got a shrink and the shrink cured him. So the last 10 years of his life or thereabouts, he actually left the property, but he was a kook. At least according to his neighbors, he was a kook because he had this thing for the Greeks. And here you have the head of Apollo walking along a little trail. All of a sudden, there's this head of Apollo buried down in here. We had been given a list of things that we were supposed to look for at these gardens. So if you found it, you got a check mark that you had found it. But you can see that it says the temple to Apollo. Well, when he put the temple to Apollo up, and he actually invited his neighbors to come in and worship with him, they'd had it. They said, nope, you've gone one step too far. I don't know if they ever did anything other than shun him, but they weren't going to go for that because they were good Protestants and they weren't having any of that stuff. He had this great idea of putting these pediments all around the pond so you could sit there and enjoy them. Now, I'm pretty sure he didn't carve those. I think he may have carved the one in the bottom, but I think after World War II, there were a lot of places that had been so completely destroyed, and there were just junk heaps of all kinds of things that if you had an eye for it and you could salvage stuff, I think he salvaged it. Elizabeth McGregor. Now here's a lady, let me tell you. They established this place in 1987 as a mail order catalog place. Again, it's very small. It doesn't take up but maybe 2-3 acres max, most of which are greenhouses so that she can grow the things that she uses for her. These are 2 of the plants that she has hybridized herself. That one had a sign, so, you know, angel wings. I don't know if it's an angel wings, whatever. But the big thing she did is anemones. You know how anemones just kind of go everywhere. Once you have them, you've always got them. She developed an anemone that stays in place, stays upright, stays where you put it. And it won the Chelsea Flower Show in 2011. And she has since hybridized an entire series of these. I asked her, can I buy one? And she said, no, you can't buy one because you can't take it with you. You can't bring it into the United States. And I said, well, do you have a mail order outlet in the United States? And she said, sadly, no. The restrictions in the United States for importing plants is too stiff, but that she thinks that she has made a deal with some company in California that we should keep a lookout for the things from Elizabeth McGregor. She has, can you see the wall in the top picture back there? Okay, and I think I put a thing up here that says that the wall is heated, it's hollow, and it's heated. It's actually a double wall. And what they do is they build a fire and they have fans and they blow the hot air down the center of this wall. And that allows her in her walled garden area to be able to grow fruit trees and all sorts of things that would otherwise freeze to death. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Who'd have thought? This one, Garden of Cosmic Speculation. Oh my. All I can say is this guy has imagination. He too has a walled garden, and the walled garden is full of all kinds of weird art. And you can see that some of it is recognizable, but most of it is who knew what, because he had this thing for quarks and black holes and stuff like that. And they're supposed to be able to be smart enough to figure out which of these things is which of these things. So other than the DNA helixes that appear here, there, and yon, I don't have a clue. This was one of those gardens where it wasn't really a garden. That's a waterfall, okay? That actually is a set of stairs, but whenever it rains, it all flows over and dumps into there. That used to be the kids' swimming pool. And gave him the idea, because after he excavated it, he had all this dirt and he didn't know what to do with it. So instead, he piled it up places. You'll see that. This is where I got my picture of the thistle. The thistle is the state or the national flower of Scotland. I asked our coach driver, why was it that they had chosen the thistle? Now, mind you, our coach driver is English. And he said, I think it has something to do with the personality of the people who live here. Here we have these heaps of dirt that he didn't know what to do with. And so I presume he has one of these little rumba things that they do for the grass. I don't know, but somebody has to mow all that stuff. This garden is only open one day a year for a charity event. His wife died of some form of cancer, and so he opens this garden one day a year and raises money for whatever this charity is. But there are weird things, little rows of birch trees and things that say stuff. And somebody chipped out this from a great big tree, kind of a love seat. And all the chips are still in the corner. That was, I don't know, artistic. Whatever. What do you think that might be? I thought it was maybe a row of shark's teeth up at the top. And then a cork went through that wall. And on the other side, they have a pane of glass. So you know they did it on purpose. But whatever purpose, those are the kills that he had to fire all of the stuff that he made out of clay that he shipped all over the place. And this picture down at the bottom is the wall to his walled garden. My husband thought that the best thing about the entire place was that little wall that was built there. This is our last one. Beautiful Perth. Beautiful Perth is not a place. It is an organization. This is Sunnyside Master Gardeners in Perth, Scotland. These folks are all volunteers. And they took it upon themselves to try and revitalize Perth. Perth had been devastated by economic problems. And so the gardens that had been initially there had been let go badly. So they all met us when the coach came in. They had set up a whole series of tables. They fed us homemade scones. They fed us shortbread. We had things to drink. I mean, these people were just wonderful in terms of being welcoming. So in 2011, they became the home for the National Trust for all of the, whatever they are.
Heather.
Thank you, Heather. They have some heather everywhere. And they have 5,000 species, 500 species, and 15,000 individual plants. And they were all transplanted from somewhere else by these people to be in this garden. Now, they acknowledge that they have a problem because some of these came from the north of Scotland. Perth is on the south and east coast of Scotland and is not a particularly great climate for heather that needs cold. So they have lost a few plants, but they keep on keeping on. It's all part of a larger garden. There again, you see the endless wall. There's no place that doesn't have a wall in Scotland. This garden is part of another, and they have lots of plants, and you come out all of a sudden and you're standing there on the banks of a river. The Tay River goes through Perth. It's the largest river in at least that part of Scotland and has more flow than the two next biggest, and everything floods in the spring. So that's a garbage can. Is that not a fancy garbage can? And then what do you think that guy is? Anybody want to take a guess? No, it's a coop. You just don't get it, do you? If they have coop for dovecotes, these are cows. Yes, granted, they're cows. And that's the city of Perth's symbol. You know how Louisville did horses a while back? They do cows. They got them everywhere. I never saw a Highland coop. They were on T-shirts all over Scotland, but we didn't go far enough up in Scotland into the Highlands to be able to see a Highland coop. The Highland coops are shaggy. They got lots of stuff. This is the end of the story. This is the company that we were with, and this is our intrepid English fellow who was the driver of our coach. Let's not call it a bus. If you called it a bus, you got offended. But he was really nice, and we had a really good time. I wouldn't do it again on a bet, but I really enjoyed it. So I know I'm over my time. Do you all have any questions?
You get into that garden, it's only open one day a year.
That was that
That was-
garden that way, yeah, and I thought, what garden? Where is the garden? But they did have that tiny walled garden, but the rest of the place was acres and acres and acres of mounds of dirt that had grass on them. So, that one was open to us only because Mike Dana talked somebody into us, because that wasn't the day. They were open in May for one day, and we were there in June or July. So yes,
Bonnie,
yes.
real quick, you said the National Trust was established in the 1950s, and I noticed that several of those gardens, they were turned over
Yes,
to the trust
yes.
in the 1950s.
Yes.
So was that a political thing or?
In a way, I suppose. They needed some place for the gardens to go as families ceased to have heirs to take care of them. So they created this National Trust. The National Trust is a charity. Okay? But it is supported by the government. Or was supported by the government until the last election. And in the last election, they lost most of their funding. So now they have little signs up at all of the gardens that are operated by the National Trust, requesting a donation in order to be able to keep them going. They have not much choice, but they are a wonderful organization, and I can't imagine how they take care of 600 properties that they say that they do. Yes. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, you had mentioned, Bonnie, in early slides that there was roses that didn't have a spot on them.
Yeah.
How did they do that? Is it because of their immunity, genetics, or is it because of fungicides or other chemicals they use?
For the most part, Scotland is really ecologically centered. They don't use any kind of pesticides, or they are both basically an organic gardening group. So how do they manage that? Beats me. Other than the fact that their climate is such that I don't think it ever gets warm enough there for any kind of the diseases that we have here that create the black spot and such. I don't think it ever gets warm enough there. Since I came back, I have been keeping track of what the climate, the temperature is in Edinburgh. And as hot as we got last summer, they never got anywhere close. And as cold as we got this winter, they never got anywhere close. They truly have a temperate climate that doesn't vary, but maybe 20 degrees or so. So just amazing, just amazing. Anybody? You want to go to Scotland now?
Yeah.
I don't blame you. Thank you very kindly.
Well, we're gonna start our meeting if you guys don't mind. I'm calling the meeting to order. I guess, well, the minutes were submitted for approval from Veronica, who is not here today.
Yes, you need a vote. Is there, sorry, you want me, so you need to ask if there's any corrections.
Are there any corrections to the notes that Veronica sent out from our last meeting?
Other than where we were supposed to meet, but she didn't know that then.
Right, okay, thank you. Did you hear that? She said other than the location, but that changed. We were unaware of what the location was gonna be.
Now you need is a motion.
Would someone motion to approve the minutes, please?
Karen Bohannon, motion.
Second.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jane Archer. Jane Archer.
Jane Archer.
No problem. I'll be your backup. I haven't turned my mic on yet, but it won't be loud. Go ahead. Boys. All those in favor?
All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, minutes have been approved. Thank you. I'm kind of rusty. Not good at this part of the step, so just so you guys. Yeah, eventually I'll learn. If not, you guys will just have to help me through this. Okay, next thing on our meeting is the treasurer report. Mike,
Got it.
Lisa. Get close to your lips, I
Yes,
guess,
I
is
got
what
it.
I'm told.
Okay, this is March, so we started off with 31,500, a round off. And then our receipts, for Pollinator Day, we got a grant from the Shine Foundation. That's to cover our tent rental, I believe, for Pollinator Day. We received member donation of $150, t-shirt money of 30, which there'll be a lot more of that coming in.
NW30.
And open house we collected in donations, $241. So total receipts were $33,191. And scroll a little bit more, thank you. Disbursements, we paid out the speaker fee for last month. Room rental for tonight is $100. Bluebird Trail expense $529, and Pollinator Day expenses $35.56. So total expenses are $42.59. Ending cash balance $30,426. Any questions? Okay, I'm finished.
Don't too fast.
Sorry. He got done way too fast. He got done way too fast for me.
The next thing we have on there is, and I hope I pronounce this right, Renata Lewis regarding the Clark County Demonstration Garden. She is gonna do a PowerPoint for us.
It's very short. I'm just here,
And you just have, it's on.
okay,
There you go.
I'm just here to, highlight the, Clark County Demonstration Garden tonight. And, ask that if anyone's interested, we would love to have you volunteer. This is the, Clark County Demonstration Garden. It is, on Highway 62. You can go to the next screen.
It's gotta catch up to you.
Oh, okay. All right. This is just a view of it. Our purpose is to educate the public. It's to demonstrate different types of vegetables, herbs in the garden, and inspire the public so that they can see, yes, I could do that in my particular garden. So it's not a great big place, but it's good. The location is on Highway 62 as you go past River Ridge. It's there on the right, and it's at the 4-H Fairgrounds. The Clark County Extension Agent has their office there also. Soil and Conservation does too. It's between the arena over here on the right and the one of the 4-H exhibit buildings there on the left. The nice part about it is there is sort of a semicircular road right in front of it and a walkway behind it, so that during fair or really anytime, people can pull off of 62, which has gotten extremely busy now that River Ridge is there, and pull back to look at the garden, take a walk back there, whatever. So it's really at a premium location there. The garden is 8 by 40 foot raised tiered beds, which we amend the soil every year. We put compost and different things in there. We have some mulch pads between the garden beds. We usually try to do about 25 different types with different varieties of vegetables. We stick in there as much as we can. And we do 3 different gardens, basically, an early spring garden, a summer garden, and then a fall garden. And as soon as something comes out, something else goes in there. So we really do a lot of successive planting. We try to do different methods that will help us with tiering, with dwarf plants, things like that. So this is us working last year. This was in the spring. There were our peas on the pea fence, some beets there. And then this was summer. Max was watering the okra, it looks like. And then in the fall, we were taking out our sweet potatoes. But those sweet potatoes went crazy, except that when we dug them out, some little voles had gotten in there and eaten so many. Oh, we salvaged a lot of them too. So we take all of our produce down to the Center for Lay Ministries. So we had lots of voles. So I just, another sign, we like to have flowers there too. In the front of the garden, we have 2 pollinator pockets up next to the 4-H building, and we have a compost pile behind that 4-H building right there. So we try to, keep all of our stuff right there. We would just like for you to come by and visit. We'd love to have you volunteer anytime that you can join our group. We meet on Wednesday mornings at 9 o'clock. But there are other opportunities for people, during the summer, weeds don't just appear on Wednesday mornings. So, we've got lots of weeding and lots of picking too, during the summer. So please stop by and, enjoy our garden, which we certainly do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Renata. The next on the list is Judith in regards to the tomato festival, please. Oh, she has a whole box. Nice.
We'll go through this quickly.
Okay.
Our time frame. Archie, where are you? Hi. Thank you. I'm Judith Mandela. This is Margie Conrad, along with Linda Best and Jean Wolf. We are managing the little shop of gardening goods. No flesh-eating plants this year. So we brought some things to show you the kind of things we'd like to have in donations. And I just want to wake you up for you to start thinking about donations for us. Our event is in August, and we want to have our booth, our little shop, full of interesting things. So here are some things. Do you want to open this and open this first? Okay, we'll go through this. These are things that one of the master gardeners has made, and these are things. That's my EpiPen goes in there. That's my EpiPen. And I want to do a shout out to Rosa Hutchins, because she made all of these things, and even these bags too, and they went over really well. They all been sold out from all the things she made, and she has committed to help us again this year with more goodies. So things like if you sew or you know someone who sew, you can make all kinds of things. And then, we had a lot of aprons. And this is just a little simple one that I made, to see how much skill I have. But we had beautiful aprons, but they were really popular and they sold real well. And of course, let's look at these. Books and magazines, we received a lot of those, but we sold a lot too, and what was left over, we gave to the library to sell. So if you have books, I know these are popular. I see these on the, door prize table all the time. So if you have any that you're finished looking at, please bring them. Now, most of these, anything big like that, we want you to bring it just the day before the event in August, and you can bring it to the, Purdue Center, we'll collect them there. But I want to have a plea, I'm a house painter as a retiree, and so I paint houses. And a little house like this, little wooden, they're birdhouses, and they're decorative. And so this is an old one that needs to have a refresh, so I'm gonna dress that up. This is how they start. They just start little wooden houses. If you have anything that's little wooden that you could donate, I'm going to paint it and decorate it and fix it up. And we're going to try to sell some of those at our thing. And that's another one. Margie's going to show you another. This is a larger size. These you can buy just about anywhere. Maybe you have one sitting around that you don't need anymore. Please bring it. And these things you can bring next month, May meeting or the June meeting, which will give me time to paint and decorate them. And then, I found this, isn't this cute? It's a little hat. I bought it $2 at a yard sale. So if you have something that's ceramic that might use in a garden or garden decoration, please bring that. We can sell that too. And then finally, I thought today, if you have a hat, a sun hat that's in good shape, bring that and we can sell that too. Now, this one is a special one, as you can see, beautifully decorated for the Bonnie's butterfly open house event that we had for several years. And I would wear this hat to welcome people. So I like to decorate. If you have a hat, maybe all it needs is a new ribbon or something, please bring it next week. And we'll do that. Okay, so thank you, Margie. That was the list of things I brought. We have sign-up sheets here in the back. If you can volunteer, we need you. We want you. If you're out there in Zoom land, we need you. We want you. There's a sign-up sheet for growing tomato plants. So if you could do any of that, please sign up. You know, we have 3 major events during the year. We have the wreath class in December. We have Pollinator Day coming up right now. Wreath class has been going on for over 30 years. Pollinator Day has been going on for 10 years. And our Tomato Fest, which is the baby of our festivals, this is going to be our 2nd year. All of these events are so successful, and who can tell me the reason they're so successful?
Volunteers.
Volunteers. Volunteers.
That's it, volunteers. It's us. We make these events successful, and the money we make at these events are what allows us to fulfill our purpose of doing things for our community and teaching people about gardening and helping them grow. So we need you as a volunteer. I'm really asking, I know you're going to hear that tonight over and over, and you'll hear it next month and the following month, but we need you. So please volunteer. And on a side note, I just wanted to announce, I'm going to set this in the back. As many of you know, I'm a member of the community orchestra. Several of us are, and we're having another concert in May. It's free. And it's really fantastic. There are now 60 members of the orchestra. So I'll put that on the back. If you're interested, take a picture. Did I do that quick enough?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Connie, did you have something in regards to Pollinator Day?
Don't have a lot, but, this year we're gonna have plants that we're gonna ask donations for. And we're also going to have a garden
garden items that we're also going to sell, or ask for donations. Again, bring the plants. We're gonna be staging things the Friday night before, or the Friday before pollinator day, the 26th, or the 25th. You can bring, the plants to the extension center that Friday and put them with where our stuff, the SMG booth stuff is gonna be staged. Or that even better, bring them the morning of pollinator day, just bring them early enough that we can get them organized on our table. If you have any, used or gently used and not abused, garden items, books, things that you want to donate for that table, you can bring those also that morning of. If you are making anything that's a craft item, we aren't going to have those at our booth. I think it's for the Friends of the Pollinators booth. They'll be taken over to that booth for them to sell. Keep saying sell, and I know it's donations.
Yes, we don't sell things.
We don't sell things, but I will say that, quite a few members that have contacted me told me that they're growing plants for us. If we get everything that people have told me they're bringing, we are going to have a fantastic selection of plants. So I'm really, really eager to see what we get. So that should be exciting. We'll have another good fundraiser for that next month. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you so much. I am gonna go a little bit out of order. Kathy, you wanted to talk about the Youth Master Gardener program, please?
Hi, everyone. We've started to get registrations in, but it hasn't been an avalanche. So if you had talked to someone and given them information, you might want to give them a little nudge and remind them that, the time is now to sign up kids 8 through 12 for the Youth Master Gardener program. I have some little, forms that have our website address on it for them if they want to read more about it and get the application form. So we rely on your all's help in locating little kids who might like to be in the program. Also, we can use a few 40-ounce peanut butter jars. We use those to make for the kids to have worm bins where they raise worms that compost. So we don't need a ton, but we need a few more. So, if any of y'all can do that for us, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Kathy. Next is, again, I'm going a little bit out of order here. Lee, did you want to talk about the bluebirds?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, because we're people on Zoom need to hear, so that's why we have to use that microphone.
Yeah, the Thursday, the day after tomorrow, we were planning on a work day at my barn, but we're canceling that because of the weather. And, we've had a real tough time this year. We've only had 2 work days this year so far because of weather and some personal issues and so forth. So we will probably, try for a week from this coming Thursday. Because we do need to build up our inventory a little bit of boxes. I have a bunch of these monitor forms with me tonight. If anyone that's doing monitoring of, bluebird trails, I've got a bunch back there, so just come and get them. I also brought a couple extra boxes with, so if you need a box or 2 for your trail, see me after the meeting. And, if you want to take on any more, if you don't have a trail and want a trail or want to, share a trail or something of that nature, or any changes in your trails, give me a call or send me a text message. Emails don't work so good in my situation. I get 200-300 a day and I oftentimes miss it. So send me a text or give me a phone call. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. Deb, did you want to talk about some shout outs?
Sure. I'd just like to thank everyone who has already donated to our shout out program for Pollinator Day. We use that money for the crafts that we prepare for the kids for that day. We try to add some new educational games for the kids every year, and it's very much appreciated. We have collected a little over $300 at this point, some more donations tonight. This will be the last time that we'll be talking to you about that, but if you haven't donated and you would like to do that, we'd be very happy to put those donations to good use. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. That's fine. Next, Jeff, did you want to talk about the spring?
Yes. Because of the thunderstorms on Thursday, we're not gonna be taking the wildflower hike on Thursday. So if you haven't gotten that word yet, I've tried to get it to everybody, but just in case you hadn't heard it yet, or if you're out there in Zoom land, we're gonna try next Thursday, April the 10th, same time, 2 p.m. Meet at the Oak Shelter, which is near the end of Trail 2. And try to be there just a few minutes early so we can make sure we've got everybody square and dandy. Also, Margie, is she still in the house?
Yep, she's right there.
Margie, what do you want to tell them about the Oxmoor Farms tour? Do we have a time yet?
I did, I gave it to Kim, so I don't have it. I don't have all the info right in front of me because I gave all the info to Kim already, so she could put it in
It'll be in the next newsletter.
right, and it'll be in both newsletters coming out.
Kim, do you have it by chance?
But it will be $8, it'll be $8 person. But this is a beautiful old farm, it's probably the oldest continuous running garden in Jefferson County. It's over 200 years old, and the house itself was started in 1793 and was added on to in 1820. And it's beautiful inside, it looks like an English library, something inside of the building. There'll be directions and that type of thing in June. It's like when? It's gonna be June 23rd. That's 2 p.m. Which is the third Monday of the month. Monday is the only day that they give tours. So, and 2 o'clock should give everybody time to get there without any traffic, even.
So everybody hear that? Monday, June 23rd at 2 o'clock.
Oxmoor Farm, and the directions will be in the
newsletter. So look for all the information in the newsletter if you want to go mark the day at least.
Thanks, Margie.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Gina, you're up next.
Okay, Pollinator Day is coming up. I told you this is my first go around. Thank you all that signed up to volunteer, between you all, the master naturalists, the people from the community, because I've had people call randomly that have attended for many years and offered to volunteer. There's about 140 volunteers for the day. That does not include the master naturalists that are currently taking the class, and it does not include Republic Bank, which is also sending volunteers. So there'll be a lot of us. As we get closer, I promise you, I will send info about where to park and how that's gonna work, because with so many people, as long as the grass is dry, we'll be utilizing the space between the parking lot and the pond to put some of us that are gonna be there all day because we won't be leaving. So just be looking for emails with more info on that. It is to come. Lisa and Sarah and I spent several hours working, many hours working on this today to place everybody where I tried to place you where you asked to be placed at. Some of you, I decided that you were a master gardener and you could be flexible. Sorry, that's how it rolls. And we are starting to advertise. Well, Linda's done advertising. So that is going out. There'll be other advertising. If you want a yard sign, these are the yard signs I have left. You're welcome to take one. Just email me that you took one, because I didn't bring a paper. I don't want to track it tonight. Just email me that you have one. That's really what my focus is right now. So that's all I got. Nope.
Okay, let's see, where do we got? Community outreach. Jean, did you have anything you would like to share this evening?
Not any
Hold on,
particular.
hold on, Jean. And just so you guys know, Gina's doing a great job, so we have to use the microphones for everybody who's in on Zoom, so they can hear what we're saying.
Good point.
So no, I don't have anything specific. I have sent emails to everybody who signed up. So if you didn't get an email from me about where to park, if you're helping at Paristown, shoot an email back and I'll try again. And thanks to Dave Brev, he's going to help me not have to be in two places at once. Don't say, all right, Gabby, you're still.
Yep, there you go, there, you found the sweet spot.
Right on top. So Dave is going to have things set up at the grant line. And I will be there setting up Paris camps.
Okay, and then, Chris, do you have anything on the cookbook?
Yeah, what about the cookbook?
Keep sending in recipes.
Keep sending in recipes for the cookbook.
We got a shout out.
This is the cookbook for the cruciferous. It's a hard word to say. So we're putting, go ahead.
We got a shout out today on WDRB about Harristown. We got a shout out today about Harristown, that the Sunnyside Master Gardeners would have seeds available. Several times he was on, and Keith Kaiser was there, and he was talking about it, and we were mentioned a couple of times.
And Debbie pointed out that there is a box of cruciferous seeds over here if you want to give a try to someone else this year. It's there it is. I had to find the sweet spot where that's at. So there is a box of seeds with cruciferous plants in it over here, if you want that.
Okay, so does anybody have anything else? Because I know we kind of had, people have been on vacation and things like that, so we've kind of added a few people in. Connie, you want to say anything? Why not? Okay, so, I have mentioned to a couple different people and at the beginning, again, thank you for your flexibility and locations. Process, I always want to say processor, I don't know why, but Prosser is doing construction. So at this time, we may be there next month, we may not. If not, we do have a backup, which is going to be the Clarksville Library. Again, a lot of people are concerned with parking. Yes, sir.
Clarksville Library's gonna kick us out at 7:50, so.
Yeah, so again, just a reminder, hold on one second. Just a reminder, when we are at the libraries, these people have been working all day. They want to leave at 8 o'clock. So we have to be out of there at 7:45. So we may not be taking a break. We may not be having snacks. What's most important is that we're getting together. We're having our training and we're getting up to date on what's going on with our meetings. If you're concerned with parking, I suggest carpool. I mean, go out to, like I said earlier, carpool, go out to dinner with your friends, then come to the meeting. I mean, it's a nice way to spend an evening with your master gardeners.
Kathy, what was your
Kathy,
question?
what do you want to say?
We're worried about that cost of here, but we pay a donation to Prosser of $100.
So you're right that you all do pay a donation to Prosser. I think part of that was that goes back to the students where this goes back to the RMC. So there's someone, not that the RMC doesn't need it, but that it helps benefit the student education.
Right. So
Mark,
thank you for mentioning that though.
I was just gonna say, we probably ought to announce then that there will be no snacks next month.
We'll get together. We'll work that out.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll work it out, because if we're at Prosser, we can still have snacks. Well, I think that's even at the library.
At the library, though, there's parking in the front and in the back.
And again, if you're right, if we're at the library, we're not gonna have time. Because we need to be out by 7:45. And again, we need to respect that because those folks work. They need to go home. We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
So the next thing is, closing remarks. Education hours, 1 education hour. 0.5. And 0.5 for volunteer hours. Please make sure you're going out there and doing that. That helps Gina in recording. I'd like to call a motion. Will someone call a motion to adjourn?
Bonnie called the motion.
Barb seconded.
Barb Brewster seconded.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
All right, good morning to ladies.